let's consider another relationship worth considering in our discussion of compassion. And this is the compassion and relationships. What is the relationship between the two? There are two participants in the activity of compassion. On the one hand, the one in distress, yung nangangailangan ng tulong, and on the other hand, the one showing compassion, yung nagbibigay ng awa. The two are mutually related. One cannot show compassion if there is no one manifesting distress. And one manifests distress in the hope of receiving compassion. They're dependent in a way. In relation to these two mutual relationships, we understand power as an issue in the relationship. The one in distress should not be a mere victim of another's compassion. As O'Sullivan once said, when power meets power, you have a power struggle. When vulnerability meets power, the result is alienation. But when vulnerability is met by fellow vulnerability, the result is intimacy. You cannot approach the one in distress from the perspective of superiority, of power. You can only approach the other from the perspective of vulnerability. Vulnerability brings a degree of transparent honesty and defenseless trust to the act of compassion. Ideally, the one showing compassion will have qualities of feelings with the other's distress. And with this feeling, as we have said, of a desire to alleviate it, and of a willingness to hold the other who caused the other person in anguish. This preparedness to bear others' misery brings strength, surrender, and sacrificial love to the meaning of compassion, which also plays a very important role. As we have said, vulnerability manifests more and more a common and shared humanity, which is very important in the process of compassion. The Hebrew word raham is often translated in English as compassion. It comes from the word for womb, sinapupunan. To have compassion is to feel the life of another person in a similar way to a mother's feeling for the child in her womb. There is oneness there. There is unity. The Greek verb sphlanizomai, or be moved with compassion, actually comes from a Greek word which refers more to one's innards, lamang loob, abdominal organs. It basically literally means sphagnismai, that one is moved from one's core, from the depths of one's being. In the biblical tradition, compassion is about feeling the anguish of another and responding in order to lessen suffering and to increase blessing. Compassion is related to mercy, provision, restoration, liberation, and good fortune. It involves enhancing personal dignity and helping people find their truest freedom. There are some similar words to compassion, such as pity, to feel sorrow for, solidarity, to bear with or stand alongside, to attach emotionally, and love with its levels of affection, intimacy, and commitment. Compassion at this point is very different to a word like control. The Latin word passio, passive, is the English translation, passivities, literally means I suffer, I feel, I bear an event. It leads to words like passivity, I let happen, or passion, letting oneself be taken by love, anger, etc. Like the passion of Christ. It's not something that he did to himself. It's something that was done to him. Compassion has an element of let it happen, trust, give into the hand of another. Love and suffering are things that happen to us. They are, if you like, gifts that come to us only if we let them in. Control, therefore, on the other hand, is not about letting happen, but making happen. Control is about reason and having power over something, being on top of everything. Consider a word like sacrifice. This shows us concern for another, that we let even the difficult things happen to us. We let the difficult things happen to us. Perhaps we save others to the point where we cannot help ourselves. On the other hand, consider a word like fear, where maybe we use cognitive strategies to control hormonal activity and regulate emotional distress. Fear focuses our internal resources into finding control. But if we leave it there, then we will spend our energy trying to save ourselves to the point where we can no longer help others. Compassion for someone else often seems to be easier than compassion for oneself. This may, of course, depend on our sense of self and our ability to connect with others. Here we can look at the characteristics, and the ones in gray are actually mixed up. And I want you to figure out how to arrange them correctly. So What's that good connection with others? What's that good sense of self? What's that limited sense of others? What's that poor sense of self? And then you'd see where good connections really fit in and where bad connections really does, no? In this sense, for example, good sense of self, I matter, but you don't matter. Life is all about me. Poor empathy, I'm not emotionally involved. I see self as the hero. The other one is perfectionist, refuses to admit weakness, dominance, and control, rigidity, but may act out. Is that a good sense of self? Or is it a bad sense of self? Okay. Or when you say, for example, that I matter and you matter, life is about us. No? Obviously, there's a good connection with others. But when you say you matter, I don't matter, life is about others, that's a limited sense of the other. So figure the correct headings. Ask yourself, is this a good sense of self? Is it a limited sense of self? Is it a poor sense of self? Is it a good sense of self? Consider which is which. If you like this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Samo't sa Simula. Maraming salamat po.